Beautiful.
So this is mostly just for anybody who was investigating down here. If you need to get a hold of me, you don't want to come to the walkie-talkie because then everybody's going to hear what you have to say. But if you're down here and need to get a hold of me, I'm going to be behind that door the whole time. So if you see anybody walking back and forth through here, it's probably me, but I will just ask about it. Okay. So, welcome to the Sorrel-Weed House. We are right now standing in a 10,000 square foot Greek revival mansion. Unfortunately, not every square inch is going to be covered tonight, but the whole place is haunted, so that's good enough. Now, a brief story on how this house came to exist. In 1836, Francis Sorrel, he had this house built as a wedding gift for his second wife, Matilda. Being in the early 1800s, the Sorrel family, they would have had around 9 to 15 enslaved people working here at a time. And the entirety of the lower level was used as a working quarters. Over here, actually both of these sides were two different kitchen spaces, and the fireplaces were used to cook and prepare all the food. Now, the real reason I like to start here is for a completely different spirit. This one we gave our own name to. We named him Shadow Man. So you could probably guess what he looks like because that's not a creative name. However, every single time people have seen him, they always describe him in the same way. Abnormally tall, like 7 to 8 feet tall, with indistinguishable features. Does a very tall, three-dimensional shadow, like if a shadow pulled itself off of the wall and was walking around. Now, he can be seen all over the place down here, but 9 times out of 10 people say that he's back in this breezeway. Sometimes pacing back and forth, sprinting, other times just poking his head around the wall. So definitely spend some time back here. This chair, that looks really creepy back in this one. So people always wonder about this chair. It is a historic museum, so 99% of the furniture is off limits. But Shadow Man's chair, as we call it, is in the 1% category. The whole reason it is there is for people to sit in during his investigation. So I definitely recommend doing that. One thing that I always like to tell people to do is maybe break away from your group, bring some equipment, maybe don't bring any equipment, and just sit in the chair and see what happens. Really strange things have happened to people sitting in that chair. I won't go into details because I don't want to ruin anything for you. Now, if you go back here and pull these 2 doors towards you, you can enter that room, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. That'll be used as a linen room. And before I really get into it, there's some furniture I'd like to point out in here. These 3 chairs over in this corner are super old and fragile and antique. Please do not sit on them. And this entire side of the room is just full of really old, fragile antiques. So do be mindful of that. The couch that's in here, though, it is in the 1% category. You are more than welcome to sit on this couch. It is the more comfortable of the 2, and you'll find out why when you see the next one. So, I do know I'm inviting you into a very dark room full of antiques, but you have flashlights. Now this room was a linen room. This is where most of the cleaning and the laundry would have been done. So in here, definitely reach out to some of the enslaved people. This is where most of their time would have been spent. Ask about their lives, their days, their occupations. They were not plantation slaves, they were urban, which means they had practices like special skills they were meant to do. Some of them were cooks, some of them were carpenters, they were stable boys, they were blacksmiths, they were shoemakers, all different sorts of things. So ask about what they were doing in here. Also in this room is the first of the children's spirits, maybe. He sometimes hangs out in here. And his name is Bobby. Now, we believe that he is, I'd say, actually, no, I'm not going to tell you. We do have an age for him, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'd like you to find out. So Bobby is a very interesting character. A lot of the times people get good activity with him around the fireplace area. So for that reason, we just made up our own theory that he's probably hanging out, sitting in the fireplace, waiting for his parents to get done working. So you can reach out to him while you're in here. If you do, I would recommend the spirit box or the flashlight thing. That's usually his, like, the most activity that people get with Bobby is through those 2 things. Also this room, when I was talking about internal feelings, this room is really big for it. Kind of just the whole property itself, but this room definitely. Pay attention to your feelings in here. And now, we're going to enter this room. But before we do, this is going to sound like a scare tactic. I promise. It is not. If any jewelry, specifically earrings, if it was really important to you, or if it is really important to you, if it was expensive or belonged to somebody important to you, you can remove it if you want. If you do not, I would just recommend keeping an eye on it while you are here.
Ooh, have a gotcha.
Alright. So, a few things about this room. First, there is some furniture in here. This chair right over here, if it is not the oldest, it is one of the oldest pieces of furniture that we have. Please do not sit on it. It absolutely will break if you do. And this wheelchair, also very old and fragile. Please don't sit on it. The REM pod won't feel good anyway. This couch back here, though. It is the not so comfortable of the 2 couches, but you are allowed to sit on this. It doesn't look comfortable because it isn't. But people have come back to this house specifically for that couch. Before I get into the couch, though, back here. So behind this board of wood, that's where I'm going to be the whole time. Behind there is like our whole camera system and all their computers and everything. So if you are back here and your K2 starts going off, that is because of me. Now, that couch. So that couch. People have sat there before, or people do all the time. If you do end up sitting on that couch, you will feel it and you will hear it because it is really creaky. The springs will compress down, they're super loud. And people have done that before. They sat on the couch and they've heard and felt the springs next to them compress down, like somebody sits beside them. They have felt the opposite, like somebody stands up to get off the couch while they're sitting on it. More extreme case, this only happened once that I know of. There was a lady sitting on that couch for a little bit, and she said it felt like somebody took her arm and was lifting it up as they get her off the couch. So, that couch, super exciting. This room as a whole is just exciting in general. It was used as dry storage for most of its time, but there was a brief 5.5 years where it served a completely different purpose. Frank Sorrel, he was one of Francis's oldest sons, and he was a doctor, but more specifically, he was a trauma surgeon. And for 5.5 years, predating the Civil War, this was an operating room for trauma surgeries. So he was dealing with mostly amputations, but luckily he was one of the absolute best His mortality rate was one of the lowest in the entire nation, about 51%. So, yeah. So he did lose a little more than half of his patients in this room. And for that reason, we believe this is possibly the most physically active room. People tend to get lots of external feelings, like clothes getting tugged on and hair getting played with and things like that. Also, so we don't really have any hard enough evidence to make us believe that Frank himself is still here. You can reach out to him if you want. He looks like this in that picture. That's him right there. If you want to know what he looks like, that's what he looks like. You can reach out to him if you want. We don't think he's here, but who knows? We do believe that at least some of his patients are still around, so you can reach out to them. You can ask about, I don't know, whatever with them. I've had people ask about what kind of limbs they were having amputated, so if you want to do that, by all means. Now, there is one, maybe two children spirits in this room, and I say that because the first is known as the earring kid. So, don't really know much about them. I kind of have my own personal theory that maybe it's Bobby. I have no kind of evidence to back that theory up. I just have a feeling. Maybe it's him, maybe it's not. We have no idea. But we do have a child spirit a lot of the time in here that likes to steal people's jewelry for some reason. So, that's why I warned you about that. Now, if you do happen to lose a piece of jewelry while you are here, I'm going to tell you now there is a less than 1% chance that it's ever going to be seen again. I have no idea why, they just disappear. But if anybody happens to find a ridiculously large stash of jewelry hidden somewhere, it's yours. Now, so earring kid, maybe Bobby. Now another spirit named Sarah is a lot of the times in this room, and Sarah is one of my favorites personally. So we believe that she likes to play hide and seek, and that sounds terrifying. It is a little bit different than regular hide and seek. She has an advantage, being a spirit, you can't see her that well. However, the way that you find her, usually she likes to hide underneath things, so walking in front of tables, going in front of furniture, sitting on couches. The usual way that she lets you know that you have found her. Sometimes we'll get pokes in the back of their legs, sometimes we'll get their shoelaces untied or just played with. Most of the time, though, people are having their ankles tugged off. Now, that sounds really bad. It sounds terrifying. So is the next thing that I'm about to say, but it's not as bad as it sounds. The way that you can tell that you're being touched by a spirit will probably not feel like a human hand. That sounds terrifying, doesn't it? So if you do feel a human hand while you are here investigating, there is a very good chance that it is a human hand. The way that you can tell it's a spirit will more than likely feel almost like cobwebs or like a loose hair that just doesn't exist. It has been described as a really warm sensation, like if somebody were holding a lighter underneath an isolated patch of your skin, or if you were just to hold your hand above an oil lamp for a while. Have you ever heard of cold spots? Hot spots are also a thing. And it's also been described as pins and needles, where it itches a bit, or a patch of your body feels like maybe it went numb, or maybe it fell asleep. I've also had people describe that thing as kind of like a really like light static shock almost. So that's kind of what you're feeling for. Now, one last thing, this goes back to playing hide and seek. If you do decide to play hide and seek with Sarah tonight, I've had people do this before. They'll like, we'll just go, okay, let's play hide and seek. And then they just stand there and they wait for something to happen. And nothing happens. So if you do decide, I've also had people get like really, really into it. I've had people go and like cover their face and they'll count down from like 10. And then they'll go around and look in different areas. People have used equipment before, like putting their K2s underneath tables and couches. I've had people use the spirit boxes before while playing hide and seek. And there have been 3 times that I know of where back around here, like by this table or back in that corner, people have been playing hide and seek with the spirit box. They'll go back there and they'll hear a voice come through that says, "You found me." So that's always cool. I've also had people go and hide and have Sarah try to find them. I've had people hide underneath this table before. If you want to hide under this table, do it. I don't care. Now, any questions about the lower level at all?
So it's Shadow Man, Sarah, Bobby,
Yes.
and then James.
Frank.
Frank. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, cool. That was what I was about to do, is a quick recap. So yeah, kitchen spaces, Shadow Man, linen room, Bobby, surgery, Sarah, earring kid, maybe Bobby, and that couch. Now, if you would like to head out this way, you can push through these doors, and I will meet you out there in just a moment. So you have your flashlights, one to help you see, two to help you investigate. For seeing purposes, this step that I'm on right now is way less illuminated than all of the other steps. While we are heading upstairs, keep that in mind. Right this way.
Are there any like Glade plugins?
Yeah, up here, yes. There's a whole bunch of, like, I don't know how they smell so strong because they're just candles.
Yeah.
They're not lit. But they smell really, there's like 8 of them up here. Yeah, and like the next rooms we'll see, they're like, there's a few on every table. So, up here. Well, unfortunately up here, all of the furniture on this entire floor is going to be off limits. And there's a cool thing about that though that I'll tell you in a minute. So, kind of disorienting walking into the very dark, the very large house with the very dark basement. Just so everybody knows where we are. That is the front door. Right there.
Oh, wow.
So, out here, if anybody ever walked into this house, this is the first thing that they would see. It's also where I'm going to be putting the EDI. Because out here, we do get a lot of reports of footsteps. So, this is where I'm going to be putting it. So you can come out here and mess around with that if you like. Now, we do get lots of footsteps out here. These are the original floors on this entire first floor. So there have literally been thousands of feet that have walked on this exact same floor over the past almost 200 years. Now, footsteps are a big thing. There's also one more child spirit I would like to introduce to you, and that is Matilda Ann. Francis and his second wife, Matilda. They had 8 children together, but 3 of those 8 died before they were 7. And Matilda Ann was one of those 3. She was 6 years old, and she died on the 4th floor of this house, in what used to be the children's quarters of scarlet fever. And people have gotten some pretty decent activity with her, hanging around on the landing or just on the stairs in general, coming up and down the stairs. So you can reach out to her if you would like. That's about it for this main hallway. We're going to go into that room for just a minute. You can just push that open. Was used as the study or the office for Francis. This is where a lot of his work was done. He was a shipping merchant, very successful at that. And he looks like that. That's Francis. That is his wife, Matilda. That's what they look like, in case you're wondering. There's bigger pictures of them in the next room, but that's just what they look like. So, this room was used as his office, essentially. We kind of call this the safe room because a lot of the times not a whole lot of stuff goes on in this room paranormally. But you can still investigate here if you would like. Sometimes things do happen. It's not the safe room all the time. If you do decide to look around for ghosts in here, I would definitely recommend using a spirit box. That's probably the biggest thing that people have had activity with here. Also, one last thing before we actually go into the main room. While you're up here investigating, there might be a point during your time spent up here where you hear a bunch of footsteps coming from up there. That is a real person. I'm telling you that right now in case it happens. We do have a caretaker on site from time to time. I believe he's here right now, and if he's ever around in town, then he'll stay up on the 3rd floor. He knows that these are going on. He knows that he's not supposed to be really loud when they're going on. And he's usually pretty good. But if he has to get up in the middle of the night to go do whatever, I can't stop him from that. The way to tell if it's him or not, because sometimes we do get footsteps that are not him from up there. I will say that he is by himself, so if you do hear multiple people walking around, at least one of those people is real, but the rest of them aren't. But his footsteps, for some reason, sound like somebody is wearing cinder blocks on their feet, and I have no idea why, but that's just how he walks. So if you hear that, it's probably him. If you hear something else, that's probably not him. Now, we're going to head across the hallway into the next rooms, and that's the main part over here.
Beautiful. Oh, no, you're fine.
These are the parlor rooms. These Sorrel family. At one point in their time spent in Savannah, they were the richest people in the entire city. And Francis is this big successful businessman. He's one of the wealthiest people in town. So he has this kind of high political status. And in order to keep that status, he hosted these ridiculously large parties all of the time. Hundreds of people would be attending them. So they didn't actually begin in the house, they started outside. But later in the evening, people started going home, and a very elite few, maybe 15 to 20 people, would be brought back into the house for the after party. In here, they would feast, and they would drink, and they would dance all through the early hours of the morning. And then, when there were a few people left, they would split up into 2 different groups. The men would gather over here, and the women would gather on that side. And they would close the pocket doors so all of their conversations could then be held confidential to each other for the rest of the party. Now, in here, definitely reach out to some of the party people, see what they're doing. We do get good activity with that, definitely in these 2 rooms, because this is where they happen. If you do decide to reach out to the party people, a few things I would recommend. One, in this room, for some reason, it's kind of more often than that room, but people get a really good activity in here when they ask questions about different types of alcohol, like different brandies or whiskeys or bourbons. So if you have any liquor knowledge, now is a good time to use it. Also, if you decide to get involved with the parties, I like to recommend splitting your group up by gender, having the men over here and the women over there. And if that doesn't work, flip it and have the women over here and the men go over there. See if that does anything different. If you do decide to do that, one thing I ask is that you do not close the pocket doors. Those are the original doors. They are, one, super heavy, also pretty hard to move anyway, so if you do move them, I'm going to have a terrible time in the back, and I'm going to be very angry about it. So, don't move the pocket door. There's a piano in here. This piano has a sign on it that says, oh, my flashlight died. Nope, there it is. Please do not touch. That sign is only meant for the living. Ghosts do whatever they want, and I cannot stop them. So definitely reach out and see if somebody will play the piano, if you would like. It has worked in the past. We used to not have a piano in here, and people would hear piano music. Since we brought it in here, it just seems to happen more. For some reason, I don't know why this is such a big thing, but whenever somebody, I'd say this is like almost 99% of the time, if somebody is in here and they're trying to get somebody to play the piano, they don't hear it. But if there is somebody not in here, then they hear it. I don't know why that works. I've had people like out, like just over in that room. I've had people over in the study. There have been times where there was a group downstairs and they heard the piano, and the group up here didn't hear anything. So that's weird. I don't know why that happens, but it does. So reach out. You can see if someone will play the piano. People hear it with their ears and also with spirit boxes, so you can try out that. Now these rooms, they were used for parties, so lots of big energy times in this room. They're also just kind of the family rooms or living rooms. This is where they would hang out if they were just by themselves, so maybe it's that kind of night. They would also host wakes in these rooms, so maybe it's that kind of night. I'll let you guys decide on how the energy feels in here. And now, if you would like to head over that way, the main story, one final story before we continue. Much like out in the foyer and also in the study, the furniture in these two rooms is also off limits, but the floor is still original. More than welcome to sit on that if you'd like. I just think it's cool because this floor has been here for like 185 years, and that's sweet. There's also rugs in here to make it a bit more comfortable than sitting anywhere else. Now, up here, before getting into this story, if anybody is looking around trying to find the REM pod that's up on this floor, it's over on that table over there. Yep. So that's where the REM pod is. If you hear it going off and you can't find it, now you know where it is. If you are wanting to look for it, now you know where it is. So, you walked into a haunted house. I imagine probably expecting to hear some kind of tragic story. And you heard about the unknown number of deaths that happened downstairs because of the surgeries, but there was a bit more familial tragedy that occurred on this property on March 27th of the year 1860. The Sorrel family, they were setting up for one of these large, luxurious parties, much like they always did. Matilda, the lady of the house, wanted to check in on the preparations of the party, just to see that everything had been running smoothly. Now, normally to do this, she would have went and asked her most trusted out of all of the enslaved, her head housemaid, Molly. Molly had a bit more responsibility than everybody else. She was essentially a supervisor, told everyone what to do and how to do it and made sure that they're doing everything. So her being around was pretty important, especially when setting up for a gigantic party like this. But Matilda could not find her anywhere, and after searching the entirety of the house with no luck, she then decided there's only one other place that Molly could even be if she's not in here, and that is in her bedroom. Now, across the courtyard on the top of the carriage house, that is the third and the final location that everyone's going to be investigating tonight. Whenever it's your group's time to go up there, I'm just going to bring you up and show you around. But you'll see a big room on the top of the stairs, and off to the side you'll see a room that's just by itself. That was Molly's personal bedroom, and there was a private entrance. The only way in and out of her room was from a staircase that went up to a balcony outside in the courtyard. So one door, Matilda goes up to that door. She knocks on it. She can hear a voice coming from behind the door, but for some reason she doesn't get an answer, so she opens the door. And she does find Molly in her bedroom, in her bed. But she also finds her husband, Francis, forcing himself upon Molly. So seeing this, she runs back down the stairs, comes back to the house, makes her way to the third floor, and out to the balcony outside. Now Francis runs out to the courtyard, and they're arguing back and forth between each other. At some point during that argument, Matilda was seen falling from the balcony railing and landing head first into the courtyard. 12 hours later, dying from those injuries. About 2 weeks after this happened, the Sorrels couldn't find Molly anywhere in the house, so they decided to go look in her bedroom. They went up the stairs and they opened the door. And again, she was found in her room, but this time she was hanging from one of the rafters. There is mystery surrounding both of their deaths. I cannot tell you that Matilda wasn't pushed. I can't tell you that she didn't faint. I cannot tell you that she did not jump. But what I can tell you is that in a local cemetery, you can find the Sorrel's family crypt. But Matilda is not inside with the rest of the family. She has an unmarked grave that is somewhere else in that cemetery. And usually in the 1800s, the only reason for that kind of burial would have been if it was, in fact, a suicide death. For Molly, there is much more of a mystery. There's basically no documentation behind it. But she was seen as property to the Sorrels, so they told everyone that she had done this to herself, and that was it. It was never spoken of again. But statistically, in the 1800s, the average height for a person was a bit shorter than it is today. And given her age at the time, we have made the assumption that she was more than likely under 5 feet tall. The rafters in her bedroom are about 8 feet in the air. It is also very unlikely for her to have had any furniture tall enough to assist her getting up, or furniture at all for that matter, really. And historically, the white person's way of murdering someone, specifically a person of color, was almost always by hanging. So that is all that we really know about her death. Unfortunately, that one will always be a mystery. But here, we pretty much unanimously believe that Matilda did in fact commit suicide and that Molly was killed by somebody else. sad note to end on. We do believe that both of their spirits still reside here today, and you're more than welcome to reach out to either of the two. I just ask that you do so with the utmost respect. Their deaths are definitely nothing to be taken lightheartedly, and that kind of goes for all of the other spirits that are here as well. We don't have anything negative in the house. We don't need it. We have enough activity without it. We don't want it either. I definitely don't want it because I have to be here almost every day, and if I have to fear for my life from coming into work, I'm not going to come into work anymore. So, there's that. And when it comes to agitating a spirit just for the sake of getting activity or a reaction, I'll probably ask you to leave if you do that. So, don't. Now, any questions before we finally get started? That was a whole bunch of information in a very short amount of time. All right. One last thing. If you're up here and you're investigating, if you are stomping around and you're shouting or just being loud in general, it is an almost 200-year-old house. So whoever is downstairs is absolutely going to hear everything. And if you are downstairs and you're being loud, whoever is up here is absolutely going to hear everything. So, I'm thinking, you four are correct? Which four?
Us four right here.
Okay. Do you guys want to start up here?
Sure.
All right. Good. Any questions before you get started? All right. Then everybody else, we're gonna go this way. And we're looking.
Yeah, we're getting out.
You can sit in the chair if you got it. They have it pretty good. Yeah.
You guys. Let's start down here.
Sure.
All right. Any questions before you get started?
Nope.
All right. Then good luck. And then you four, we're gonna go to the carriage house. Well, the reason why I'm starting you guys in the carriage house. So, the reason is, one, you get to end in the lower level, and that's my favorite because then everybody gets to amp everything up, and then you get to go down there. Also, they get to amp themselves down because that is just one big group of feet. And I didn't want to put you four above or underneath a group of 8 while they're getting their energy out. So that's why I'm starting up here. This also means you're the only group that gets to see them up here with the lights on before I turn them out. So, up here, the top of the carriage house. This room was the communal living space for roughly 9 to 15 people at a time. In here was their house, where they lived, slept, cooked, ate, all of that. That door was actually the only way to get in here, because those stairs did not exist. Back there is Molly's bedroom, and you are allowed to go in there. People ask all the time. That red pod is in the chair right there, just because the camera is back here so we can see it if it starts going off. Now, Molly is up here. Bobby, he might be up here. This is where he lived. There's also another spirit named Samuel, or Mr. Samuel is what we call him because we think he likes it. He's pretty cool. A spirit box for that guy, definitely. Anybody else that might be up here, if you catch any names, let us know. As for furniture, it is off limits. The edge pieces of the bunk beds are totally fine to sit on if you would like. I would be weary about the middle just because they're not quite sturdy. But the edge pieces are cool. Also, there's a chair in each of those corners back there. You're more than welcome to sit in those chairs. You can move them around. I bring them over here if you want. Floor is fine too. Whatever you want. Any questions?
No.
And then I'm gonna get this.
bed is off limits, right?
Yes. Yeah, that bed is off limits.
Alright.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Alright.
Here we go.